Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. In Season 2 of Hacks and Hobbies, we're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life who want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. In this episode, I get to speak with Candice Fathi. She's a dynamic TEDx speaker, and I had the opportunity to experience that face-to-face, in person at the TEDx Ashburn, which was one of the first TEDx events out here. And she had also spoken at the TEDx Tysons, and just learning from her about the limbic brain. And it just blew me away because, like, I am the person of the mind, and I love talking about the mind and how it is so powerful and we can make it do whatever we want. So listening to the story, listening to the talk, I was super blown away, and I decided, hey, I want to bring you on to the podcast and share with my audience the powerful information that you shared with us. So Candice, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on to the podcast.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on Hacks and Hobbies. I'm super excited actually to be here with you. We definitely come from the same hive, if you will. Your interest in beekeeping and and their communication and the way that they work together as a community. I had a lot of. I was like, this. He's kind of like a beautiful weirdo like myself. So I was, I told my husband when you told me about, Hacks and Hobbies, and then I got to hear a little bit of your background and how you got into beekeeping and whatnot. I thought, wow, honey, he's a beautiful weirdo like me. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to find my tribe. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for asking me to come on. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to be here. So, yes.
Certainly happy to have you here. It's we did have a really good conversation a few weeks back, and we were on the same plane and same thought. And and it's just like we're miles apart, but being on the same level and playing field and listening. Understanding it. It's just so fascinating.
Yeah, I heard something recently. It was actually on Super Soul Conversations with Oprah, and she was speaking with a speaker from, I guess he's from the Agape movement, forgetting his name right now, but he's talking about, basically that your tribe has your vibe. And that as you begin to vibrate, at the level where you're supposed to be authentically, your tribe just kind of comes in on that level with you, and they it pulls in the more that we are authentically ourselves, the more that we are just uniquely, awkwardly, weirdly operating on our own vibration. So
Absolutely.
We definitely have we are part of the same tribe.
Yes So Candice, it's really fascinating to hear about the talk, but there has to be some backfilling, like where did it all come from? What's your story? What journey did you take to get here?
Right. Well, my journey actually began, I began my journey as a misfit. I was told as a child, this was an accident, this was a mistake, this was being a misfit to other kids around me. I was actually twice exceptional I started school at, I think I had just turned 4 years old. So I was reading before 4.
Nice.
And I passed all my kindergarten tests. And all the testing that it took in order to be able to put me into kindergarten. And so I was the youngest kid in my classroom, as well as being probably the only Afro-Puerto Rican in my neighborhood. And so kind of twice exceptional. I didn't look like anybody. And then I was the youngest mind there. But I was keeping up with everybody, right? I was reading and writing and counting ahead of my age.
Yeah.
And so that situation, being kind of twice exceptional, it caused a lot of bullying, and there was a lot of struggling, a lot of struggle. And so
Wow.
that, so bullying at a young age, and I share about this in my TED talk very briefly, but kids would make fun of my afro, and they would make fun of me, and they'd call me, names like the N word. This one day, my teacher changed all of that just by a simple act of compassion.
Hmm.
And she asked me, what was going on. She asked me how she could help. She didn't assume that she knew how to help. She noticed that something was amiss, and she asked me what was going on. And I told her, I said, I think they're making fun of me because I didn't have my hair combed. And I mean, because
Yeah,
when you're a child, you have no idea about,
exactly.
gender bias, racial bias. You have no idea,
Nothing.
so in your mind you're like, oh, it's because I didn't have time to comb my hair this morning,
Hmm.
so that's the reason why they're making fun of me.
Yeah.
And she asked me how she could help, and I pointed out told her I needed to have my hair afro picked. And she was not an ethnic woman. She had no idea what an afro pick was. And
Hmm.
I pointed out a picnic fork that was on the table, and I said, "Hey, it looks like this. Can you use this to pick out my hair?"
Yeah.
And she picked out my hair, probably, maybe, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, but the moment I understood that I was safe
Yeah.
and I was okay, I I was able to join the rest of the kids on the recess. And
Mhm.
it's funny because some people have asked me, well, did you get bullied after that? And I'll be honest with you, Jeanette, I had I don't
No
know,
idea.
no idea.
Hmm.
Because in my mind, I was a part of a tribe. So
Yeah.
in my mind, once my mind thought that I was in a safe place, you know,
Didn't
it's
care.
like it's like the Matrix. The arrows
Mhm.
are coming in, and they're flying right over your head.
Yeah.
And so I was able to do very well in school, obviously. And but the struggle continued, obviously, through college. I
Hmm.
didn't know how I learned. And so it actually took me 8 years to finish undergraduate school.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I didn't, the learning of how I learn and how my limbic brain is, and where my inner genius lives, that has been a recent phenomenon for
Mm.
me. And I had to figure out if, what Einstein said was true. It was basically their word, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
They being the collective they.
Yeah.
It was either their word or Einstein's word, and Einstein says that everybody's a genius. And, so he was either telling the truth about E equals MC squared, and lying about the genius part, or maybe he really had discovered that,
Mhm.
we all have an inner genius. We just need to know how to tap into it.
Yeah.
And so that kind of started my journey, but it was really just the struggle of trying to find my place, trying to find my purpose, believing the bullies, or believing the genius.
Exactly.
And so I put it to the test. I put it to the test. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So I don't know where to relate because maybe first of all, I have very bad memory of my own childhood.
Hmm.
And there are some memories that have, and for some reason they're vivid because of the traumatic effort or effect that they had on me.
You see.
So I remember being choked when I was in kindergarten, I think.
See.
That's the only thing I remember. And
See.
then there's some other things. And a lot of my memories come from my grandmother retelling those stories.
Okay.
So that's really like, and she would tell me, I would always run out of the house, and I'll always be outside playing. I never want to
Hmm.
be indoors.
Hmm.
And I see that But what I wanted to get to was, it's really interesting to see that once you're in that safe place, you're now able to, like, all right, everything's okay. Let me use my mind and let's get to, let's get to the happy part, or to
let's learn,
let's
let's
learn.
discover, let's invent, let's innovate, let's create. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your mind is not able to do that unless unless it's safe. And so, like, probably for you, so my husband comes from a very difficult childhood. He's a war refugee,
Mm.
and so he experienced wartime and over in the Middle East. And so, there's a lot of things that he doesn't like to remember because of the trauma.
Mm.
And it was interesting because there are certain foods, for example. So your limbic brain holds, it not only does it hold your most authentic self, but it also holds long-term memory. It holds music, it holds sensory.
Yeah.
um, so things like taste and smell and feelings and touch,
Mm-hmm.
sensations like heat and warmth, all of that lives there in the limbic part of your brain. And so it's interesting how the way that he's able to kind of go back is by, like, eating foods that his mom made him
Mm-hmm.
when, before the war times, and or being outside, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
He was telling me how he remembers playing with his cars and playing with marbles
Yeah.
over and over and over for hours. And then,
Yeah.
when, his mom would call him in, I just got here. Meanwhile, he's been out there for like 10 hours,
Yeah. Yeah.
flicking the marble a certain way. I used to play with marbles too, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
there was the hopper, there was the flick with your thumb, there
Mm-hmm.
was, there was all these different ways that
Interesting. Yeah.
that you would play marbles and stuff. But I think that it's kind of like taking care of the child within.
Mm-hmm.
I have a
Yeah.
friend that wrote a book about that. And taking care of the child within is kind of like being us as adults going back and just tapping into that safe place,
Mm-hmm.
because that child actually the childhood brain. I'm sure you know this probably, but just for our audience that maybe doesn't know, but
Mm-hmm.
an infant's brain is actually more powerful than a supercomputer.
Yeah.
And so we're actually smarter as children than we are as adults. And
That's
so
funny.
that's one of the reasons why we kind of want to go back and tap into that special part, because
Absolutely.
that is when we were actually at our highest level of genius, our highest level of empathy, our highest level of compassion, our highest level of forgiveness. I mean, think about, how children, even these kids, these older
Yeah.
kids that were teasing me and calling me the N-word. I had no idea what a Tigger with the N-word, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Yes,
didn't
I
know.
get it. Uh-huh.
I had no idea. What's a
Yeah.
Tigger? Is that like Winnie the Pooh? I no clue. No clue.
Yeah.
And it didn't make sense to me. And so, children have just a wonderful capacity. Their EQ is just higher than ours. Capacity to love, to forgive, to have empathy, to respond gracefully, all the things that, to be vulnerable. I mean, and so they're very courageous. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so that is where that's the golden ticket. That's the game changer.
Wow. That's really interesting. And of course, it keeps reminding me, or keep going back to thinking about my children and their behaviors. And it's that learned behavior, right? That they
Mm-hmm.
learn from others, especially their parents and
Mm-hmm.
siblings. And, like, I always tell my sons, whatever you guys do, your little sister's going to learn. And they'll be like, but we don't want her to learn. Like, well, you can't. If you don't want her to learn it, then don't do it yourself. It's really interesting. And so, and it's also, what's also interesting is each child brings their own personalities.
Yes.
I can tell my older one some things, but then if that same tactic
Nope.
will
Yep.
not work
With the
on the
second one.
second one,
Yep. Yep. Or the
and
third. Yep.
or the third, and we're like, oh my God, this is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like what we were talking about in our first conversation is that
Yeah.
all of us divinely uploaded with a software already.
Mhm.
We already have software uploaded.
Yeah.
We don't, unfortunately,
It's factory installed.
it's already factory installed. It's already factory installed. And so the othering that takes place once we learn how to read, once we learn how to speak, it's a lot of othering, a lot of categorization, a lot of siloing, a lot of othering that takes
Yeah.
place. It's us and
Exactly.
others. But there was a time that you and I and your children, we all spoke, a time in our life that we all spoke and we were all operating on the same vibration. We were all, we all spoke the same language
Yeah.
and we understood each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and we understood each other. And then we take on learned behaviors.
Yes. We take on learned behaviors. We see somebody doing something
Yep.
and we do the same. And that reminds me of back in the days. Well, not back in the days. It's basically when there was two crow fighting, and this is
Mm-hmm.
like way behind, right? And one crow died. So then the
Mm-hmm.
first crow, he basically dug in the ground
Mm-hmm.
and buried the dead crow. And this is around the same time when first man killed another man.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't know what to do with the body.
Mm-hmm.
And then God sent the birds to tell him, this is what you do with the dead body.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really fascinating and interesting. I was like, wow, it's the same language that they're teaching, that God is teaching us, because, he created all creatures and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sending a message through these birds.
Mm-hmm.
When our kids are growing up, that's exactly how they learn. They look at what the parents are doing, they look at what their siblings are doing, and boom,
Yeah.
no wonder everybody walks.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that's beautiful about children as well, or when we were younger, is that they learn from everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have, children that are, for example, they may be obsessed with animals,
Yeah.
right? I think of
Mm-hmm.
Temple Grandin and how she loved husbandry, which is,
Mm-hmm.
cattle and horses, and she loved being on her auntie's farm, and
Yeah.
she learned so much
Mm.
from watching them, and observing them. And um it's yeah, we all speak, you're right, we all speak the same languages, even as the animals, and they
Mm.
learn, they learn, children have the humility to learn from everything.
Yeah.
They can learn from a bug, they can learn from bees, they can learn from animals, they can learn from plants.
Yeah.
Children are really amazing like that.
And they will learn from anything as long as they know that they're safe.
Bravo. Eso.
Right?
That part right there. Exactly. Exactly.
Because some things that are interesting is, when my child was younger, he was scared of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, he was not. Then something happened. He was this dog came barking at him,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then he got scared. And now he's scared of dogs for
Mm-hmm.
like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's opened up again, and now he's petting dogs and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really interesting to see. He's like, all right, this is a safe space, and that
Mm-hmm.
dog probably didn't understand what was going on. He was just
Mm-hmm.
protecting, or maybe that was his way of, I don't
Yeah,
know,
being happy or being
being happy.
loud. Maybe
Yeah,
it was just the loudness, right?
yeah, exactly.
And so that, yeah, loud barking makes me feel scared. So yeah.
That's really good.
So when you listen to the TED Talk, is there a special memory that you remember? You said, being with your grandma, always being outside, or
Yes.
was there special food that you remembered as you did the genius exercise?
That's a good, no, I didn't do any exercises, but
Well, I'm saying when we did the
yeah,
search,
when you
right?
did
When
the
we
talk,
close
yeah,
our
yeah.
eyes.
I don't remember if I did
If you
I might
remember
have done an exercise at that point. I just can't remember
what you
which
thought
one
of.
it was specifically. But
Well,
yes,
maybe we could even do that
yeah, let's
today.
do that today
On the
on the
podcast.
podcast. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. So I'll just do a brief. I'll just explain just really briefly.
Mm-hmm.
So in the TED Talk, what we talked about were the three parts of the brain, and we kind of talked about the master alarm sergeant in your brain, which is your reptilian brain, which has been there since the beginning of time.
Yeah,
And it was put there in order to be able to sense danger and sense when you were kind of being snuffed out.
yeah,
And sniffed out against the crowd, because that reptilian brain would put you into three modes of fight, flight. Fight against it, freeze, to freeze,
yeah,
or you would flee and run away. And what we talked about, in the TED Talk was just that, in order for us to be able to kind of tap into the genius part of our brain, or even be able to take in the information into the prefrontal, where we do the reading, the writing, the judgment, the arithmetic, the higher thinking,
yeah.
we need to have those alarm systems turned off. Otherwise, you can't enter the house, right?
Exactly.
And so we talked about being in a safe, calm space, either mentally going there. Maybe our situation is not a great situation.
Mm-hmm.
I know I had that growing up, that there wasn't a whole lot of safety around me. And so I had to escape to safe places in my mind in order to be able to survive the day, survive the week, survive that season.
Yeah.
And so then once we talked about the safety and finding the safety and turning off the alarms, then we kind of talked about the limbic brain and how each one of us has a very unique blueprint, right? We have a unique limbic brain print.
Yeah.
And so the keys that work for you are not, are not going to be the keys that work for me, and the keys that work for me are not going to work for my husband.
Right.
And what I realized is, I kept telling my husband, well, see the visual, see yourself as a child. He was like, no, 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 I don't do that. No,
No,
no, no,
thanks.
no,
I don't want
no,
to go there.
no, no, no. We do not, war refugees do not do
Yeah.
that. That
That's
is
the
not what we do.
PTSD kicking in then.
Yeah, 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 exactly. I have PTSD kicking in. And I was like, okay, so then let's approach it from a different angle, right? Because as opposed to seeing the pictures, right, let's take a different path, because there's many paths to the limbic brain, right?
Yeah.
There's your five senses. So it's what you see, it's what you smell, it's what you taste, it's what you feel and touch, it's emotional, and it's also what you hear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so like you were saying that you would hear the stories of your grandma. So maybe we could do that. Maybe we can take a deep breath. We can do that right now.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. So that, and for those that are listening, find a safe space, a quiet place in your house. Okay, so we're just going to take a deep breath in. We're going to close our eyes. And we're going to imagine ourselves as children before the trauma, before everything, right? Before the times that we felt the safest, the times when time would stand still, and we could do it for hours and hours and hours, and it would feel like no time has passed. There were certain smells, there were certain
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. In fact, I'm recording this on my phone. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
tastes. There's certain feelings. There's pictures sometimes. Sometimes there's music or sounds that we would hear. Now, take another deep breath in. Blow it out. Okay, so what did you see? What did you hear? What did you taste? Where were you at, Junaid?
So there was one moment I remember in my life when I was a young child. I think I had jaundice, and there's this one lady who used to come and she would cut some kind of vegetables, and I would just sit there. So I remember that one quite vividly, I think. And I don't know if there's any trauma related to that specific one, but I remember that one interestingly specific.
How old are you? Do you remember?
I think I was 4, maybe.
Yeah.
3 or 4.
How did you get jaundice?
Well, it's pretty normal in the Southeast Asian people to get jaundice.
Yeah. My kids all had jaundice, but it was at birth.
Yeah. So yeah, my kids all had jaundice at birth, but I had it later in life, and I'm not sure what caused it. But I remember that.
She would come every day and make you like a certain vegetable to help you with your jaundice?
I think so.
Did you spend a lot of time like in the sun? You know how they try to get you to sweat?
I probably did. I mean, maybe that's where I get maybe that's where I got to the habit of being outside all the time.
Yeah, because they want you to, the bilirubin, I know I'm not saying
the bilirubin.
The bilirubin, right, in your liver. Yeah, in order to be able, they want you to sweat and be out in the sun in order to be able to turn the liver on.
Yeah.
And so that it cleans the bilirubin out from the bloodstream.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, in fact, I interestingly enough, my OBGYN told me that, moms who nurse, actually, because it's such a cleaner way to eat, a lot of times the children will have jaundice because it's so clean that it's almost like the liver doesn't even need to turn on. It doesn't need to filter anything. It doesn't even need to filter anything. And so, and she's like, don't worry about it. And I said, well, do I need to give them Similac? And do I need to give them all this man-made food or man-made milk? And she was like, nope. She was like, no, you don't. She was like, it will all come out. Your baby's going to be healthy. The liver eventually will turn on and you'll be fine. She was like, you will be fine. But
Nice.
thank God she was a great grandmother. She was
Hmm.
she was a great grandmother and a grandmother, and and she happened to be my OBGYN to
Nice.
kind of help me to put things into perspective.
Yeah. See,
She's like, your baby's fine. Your
yeah,
baby's
exactly.
fine. You'll
Yeah.
be fine.
So what's really interesting, what I didn't learn, like what I learned just now, is that the reason for it is because the liver didn't turn on.
Right. But the
Wow.
liver doesn't have to turn on.
So there's I was never told that part.
Mm-mm.
So that's something new that I learned. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and then the other reason that we kept thinking, so when my first son was born, we were discharged like 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had to come back
Yes, we
like
did
the
too.
next day.
We did
And
too.
we stayed there for a whole week.
And then we stayed there for a whole week too.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then he's like in this little sunroom, little sun box,
Exactly.
and then
Yep. With the little glasses on and the
yeah, and
little
then we have to
yeah.
feed them with the bottle,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't know about his tongue tied because apparently my I have a tongue tie and my dad had the tongue tie, so all my kids had tongue ties.
Mm-hmm.
So that prevented him from latching on correctly also. And we're just
Right.
totally going into a totally different topic. But yeah, that was really interesting and wow, pretty crazy. The limbic brain, the safety net,
Safety.
and
Yeah.
it's really powerful. And we noticed that, and we were in that almost every day. And
Yes.
we
Yes.
create safe spaces for ourselves, so then we can operate at our highest capacity. And
Yes.
companies have done that in many respects. They'll create really safe spaces, and
Yes.
it's reminding me of this one TV show called I can't even remember, uh, but in this show, one of the employees came up to her boss, and she said, we should we should personalize our desks, our
Yeah.
cubicles. And he's like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. And she's like, that will help people to operate
Perform
on their,
better.
yeah,
Yeah.
work better. So the next day, the company took it upon themselves to personalize the cubicles for their employees.
Uh-oh.
They made
That's
a
not what she
rocket.
meant.
That's not what you meant, right? But this is a TV show, and they have to make it funny. So
Sure.
there's like a cat group, there's a dog group, there's a rocket
Right.
and the
Yeah.
fish people. So now
Yeah.
people with similar cubicles are banding together.
Sure.
And this one girl's like, I'm cat, but I want to hang out with the rocket people. I want to hang out. And then, she's now getting, uh,
Upset.
kickback, or she's getting
Pushback.
pushback from like other cat lovers. Like, wait, you're a cat lover. Why are you hanging out with the rocket people? Like,
Exactly.
so that was,
Which goes back to, Einstein's theory, right?
mm,
It
yeah,
says he goes, everyone is a genius, but the problem is that if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, and so
yes,
basically what we're doing is, in order for all things to be equal and fair, we judge we put everybody on the same standard mode of operation,
yeah,
or we categorize them, and we do the othering that takes place, right?
hmm,
The cats and others, and rockets and others, and
yeah,
as opposed to, no, how about we all just personalize it our own unique way,
yeah,
and then you naturally find your tribe,
hmm,
right?
absolutely, yeah, exactly,
Like, had you not gone after your beekeeping thing,
hmm,
I would have never recognized you as a beautiful weirdo. You
yeah,
understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, absolutely,
I wouldn't have been able to because from the outside we look so different. But when you're vibrating at your authentic level, you're
hmm,
like, oh, hey, that's the person. He's on my same wavelength. He's on
hmm,
my same. I think of a spider,
yeah,
and how that those webs go out. Remember that one in the
Mm-hmm.
movie Spider-Man? He
Yeah.
makes that huge web,
Mm-hmm.
and then he just sits on the web and he listens for trouble.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's like you make this beautiful web,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then your tribe will come in on that vibe. Like it'll vibrate and you'll be like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, there's my people,
exactly.
you know?
And
So
that's really powerful, because I'm thinking about like other ways, and you can like literally punch in those exact words to find my tribe. What do I like to do? And that's what
bravo,
that's
bravo.
what Seth Godin says, right? Seth Godin says people like us do things like this.
Yes,
Right. So you like, oh, I love beekeeping. Well, I'm gonna search beekeeping and I'll find all the people that are
yes,
also into beekeeping.
yes.
But I'm a beekeeping in this specific area. And then so you like the more targeted, the more right targeted you are in searching that specific person or that avatar. So it totally dives into like sales funnel technology and say, all of those things, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're tuning the radio to the
Bravo.
station so you can find those specific people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really goes back to know thyself, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
the more that
exactly.
you know thyself, then you're always going to be, and unapologetically,
Oh
you'll
yeah.
be tied into your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you're tied into your tribe, the more that you yourself will surprise yourself like, holy mackerel, I
Yeah.
did all that.
Mm-hmm.
How'd I do that? Like, I look back on these last 2-3 years, I graduated. I'm first generation. So my parents, God bless them,
Mm-hmm.
they although they both were accepted into college, they
Yeah.
started their family pretty much right out of high school, so they never finished college.
Wow.
So my brother and I are first generation, college graduates. And then
Nice.
I had the nerve, once I figured out how my brain worked,
Mm-hmm.
then I got the audacity to go after my master's degree in special education.
Yeah.
And Junaid, the thing that's hilarious
Mm.
is that my best friends that knew how much I struggled at UCLA, to graduate,
Yeah.
they laughed at me. They were like, "Oh, you're not going back to college. You hate reading. You hate to read. You don't even know how to turn on like you didn't even have computer. We had word processors."
Yeah.
And like if you had word processor, that was like the bomb.com. If you had an
Mm-hmm.
electric typewriter, the
Mm-hmm.
time when I was back in college,
Yeah.
so there was no such thing as like the internet. I mean, there was no such thing. Oh, just trying to explain to people, there was no such thing as a backspace button.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
There was whiteout, and if you were fancy, you had a whiteout with a sponge tip. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
was fancy. That was our
That's
backspace.
fancy.
That was like, dang. And then forget about when whiteout came out with like that little roly tape.
Mm-hmm.
You could like erase a whole
Line.
sentence. That
Yeah.
was like, whoa,
Yeah.
you know. And so, that was advanced technology when I was in
Mm-hmm.
college,
Mm-hmm.
and so none of my friends believed me. And the thing that was crazy is that I finished ahead of my cohort.
Yeah.
I started in a cohort, and
For your masters.
for my master's, I
Mm-hmm.
started with a cohort, and I was behind all of them. Most of them were, I was twice the age of most of them in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I was the butt of a lot of jokes,
Yeah.
openly. I think I might have shared with you that openly,
Mm-hmm.
I was the butt of a lot of jokes. I mean, even the professor one time pulled me aside and was like, "Honey, are people making fun of you?" I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
But it didn't bother you, right?
No, but I mean, it totally, I mean, it bothers you because you're an adult and you're like, I want to,
True.
I
Okay.
want to, I'll show you, I'll show you, punk. You know what I mean? You whippersnapper, but anyways, so yeah, I mean, yeah, it bothers you because it bothers your, it just bothers your ego and your pride, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But dang, I tell you, once I figured out, okay, this is how I learn, I killed it. I think I got one B and the rest were all A's
Nice.
in
That's
my
pretty
master's
powerful.
class. Yeah, in my master's for my master's degree. And then I graduated on top of the class, like
Hmm.
before the cohort. So most
Yeah.
of the people in my cohort are graduating now,
Wow.
are graduating on May 18th. So they haven't
Okay.
graduated yet. So like in 10
Yeah.
days they'll be graduating. Um
So it's
and
a year-long program.
it's kind of like a 2-year long program, but I
Oh
was
wow.
able to,
Okay.
yeah, I was able to finish probably in like about 18 months or maybe 6
Wow.
months.
Nice.
Yeah, because I just went after it. And so it's just amazing to me how you will surprise yourself once you figure out, once you're able to tap into your genius, right?
Mm.
And so, the way that I would get ready for an exam or even, speaking at the TED Talk is I'd go out and I'd go for a walk and I'd do some gardening, you
Yeah.
know? And
Nice.
so my husband's like, "Have you written anything down?" And no, haven't written anything down. But the tree looks great, and I've planted a lot of.
Nice.
But that was my genius, right? That's where I felt the safest. And then when I was able to do that, boom! Then now I can be the student speaker and write my speech for for my graduation day,
Nice.
and then I could put together the TED Talk. I mean, I was doing
Absolutely.
that this morning. I was doing
Hmm.
that this morning. You had said something to me that was actually very powerful, and I
Hmm.
wanted to kind of repeat it back to
Sure.
you, especially on the podcast. But you had shared something with me, and you said that bees do a dance.
Hmm.
So they find out where, the flower is, the food is, whatever. And
Hmm.
then they come back home and then they do a dance.
Yep. The
Um,
wiggle.
and they do the wiggle. And then
Hmm.
that wiggle, those steps, those specific steps is like basically how to find the good stuff,
Yeah.
how to find the gold.
Exactly.
And I
And-
realized that in this process of doing the TED Talk and kind of, doing the wiggle, doing the dance moves of, in the TED Talk, finding your genius,
yeah.
I realized that that's what I'm doing. I'm teaching people certain dance step. Okay, that step doesn't work for you. Okay, visual doesn't work for you because there's too
Yeah.
much PSD. Okay, so then let's go to audio. Okay, now let's do the audio step. Okay, the audio won't work because of loud noises and
Hmm.
barking dogs. Okay, let's jump to sensory and taste.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a certain music that makes you feel safe, but there is a special, like an Egyptian sarcophagus, or like a in the movie with Nicolas Cage, not the Mummy, but like
Hmm.
in some of those Adventures of the Lost Ark, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, they have
Sure.
like the Egyptian,
The national treasure.
yeah, like a national treasure, like they have, like the Egyptians had this combination lock, and it had to be on certain letters or
Hmm.
certain pictures in order for it to unlock, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And I think that our brain is the same way, and that's what I've discovered about myself, is that
Hmm.
certain steps and certain movements and certain sounds and certain tastes take me to a deeper level of my genius.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to do even more than I even thought was possible. And I
Absolutely.
don't think that is unique to my experience. I
Hmm.
believe that we were all created like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so we all have a specific dance, if you will, just like the bees,
Hmm.
to get us back to that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And then we can operate from that sweet spot on any given day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's funny is Snapchat recently, they've got Bitmoji stories.
Mm-hmm.
Had a story where they used that same dance analogy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had two bees, and the one bee asked the first bee, like, "Hey, where is that really nice flower you find?" And it's like, "Oh, I can tell you." And then he goes and does the dance.
How cute.
It's hilarious. And the one who does the dance has my face on it, and the one who's asking is my wife's face. So that was hilarious.
How cute. That is so cute. Yeah, that's really cute. Yeah, it's, a lot of the companies, what we're talking about, with safety and belonging, and safe place and performing at the highest capacity. A lot of companies are actually kind of getting hip to the fact that if they want to have better performance, then they have to operate, then they have to be very, careful and protective of their company culture.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the ethos, the environment that um, is within their culture. Gary Vee talks about it a lot,
Mm-hmm.
how hiring is guessing, firing is knowing.
Is knowing, like, I don't want I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this.
Nope.
And what's really interesting about that is how there's a talk about Apple and how Apple's, they say no a lot more times than they'll say yes,
Mm-hmm.
because they know exactly what they want in their audience's hand. All right. Really awesome chat. Loved it. Loved it.
Satya is doing a fantastic job being the CEO of
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft because he
Mm-hmm.
is leading
Yeah,
the company through empathy.
absolutely.
He's a father of a child of children with different abilities, with special needs,
Mm-hmm.
and he has gotten that company, not he himself,
Yeah,
but the philosophy of building on trust and empathy. That's the reason why they're $1 trillion company.
that's
And
right.
so, if we want to learn with our little small businesses, or we want to learn with our little whatever small communities, small churches, small families, you have to build on empathy. You have to build on safety. It's yeah,
Uh,
it's no longer a joke anymore. You know what I mean? It's
that's
no
true.
longer like, oh, that's what the hippies believe.
Yeah. And that's
No.
one of the reasons they've acquired or gotten companies like LinkedIn. They've
Bravo.
got companies like Linda to help
Yep.
teach and help bring that to the forefront.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. So, what is one hobby that you wish you got into?
So I honestly wish that I would have gone after anthropology, or
Mm-hmm.
even I had written this down. Um, I do believe that there's so much that we could learn from animals. I mean, I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
my research now,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
with our book about our children's book that we've written about animals, and,
Nice.
more children's books that, we're going to be launching and
Mm-hmm.
releasing about different animals and learning from them. But I kind of wish that I went after that.
Mm-hmm.
I was too afraid to embrace my beautiful weirdness.
Yeah.
And so I promised my family that I was going to be a lawyer or a doctor for way too long. you know,
Yeah.
before I finally was just like, you know what? I just need to embrace my beautiful weirdness and be good at what I know I'm good at. Anyway,
Nice.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I wish I would have gotten more into that. I think there's a lot that we can learn from animals, from bugs, even from microorganisms. There's a whole hierarchy
Oh yeah,
that
absolutely.
that is out there. From these things that don't even have brains.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyways, we can learn from viruses. So yeah, I wish I would have I wish I would have embraced my geekiness
Mm-hmm.
a long time ago, because I mean, I they are truly my tribe,
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, next question. And this is about what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Oh gosh, I have too many. Say Anything reminds me of high school and all the music. Notting Hill is just, I can always laugh. The Story of Us.
Yeah.
I always watch that whenever I need to, whenever I'm having a hard time crying. I could literally just watch, the introduction, Eric Clapton's guitar playing, and I cry. Anything Disney, because with kids, you know how that is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, anything Disney. I probably bring up Pixar and cartoon movies in my daily rhetoric every single day. Even when I'm doing counseling sessions with these people, I always refer to, because I'm a visual person, so I always refer to like the visual arts, to kind of make my point.
The one movie that resonates with our topic,
Inside Out.
Inside Out.
Yeah.
Such a powerful movie.
Yes.
It's just amazing. And I was listening to a podcast, Pop Psych 101, and there was a conversation, and they were talking about the movie. And the main person on that podcast, he's a licensed therapist. And he was like, that movie was on point with exactly what happens with the brain.
Yes. Right. There's so many. Yeah. I loved the visual analogies of, pain and family and memories and long-term memories when they're, and then when things go down into the subconscious.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
And, yeah.
Cool. And to that, we have the next question. Who is your favorite superhero?
All girls like to say Wonder Woman, right? Because I honestly, when I was young, I thought that if I spinned around enough, I would turn into Wonder Woman. I seriously thought that. Linda Carter. Yeah. Best. And still is in my mind. She's like, life-size Barbie. With blue eyes and brown hair and gorgeous eyelashes. So yeah, I loved Linda Carter and I loved Wonder Woman growing up, and I would spin in the backyard for hours.
Nice.
Hours. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. All right, last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
The word that's coming up is Risk, but I don't play Risk. Isn't Risk the one where you're
basically take over
the world, right?
World, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if I was a board game, I would Risk, because I like, I am adventure driven for happiness discovery. ADHD. I am that. I'm driven by adventure. I'm driven by daring.
Yeah.
I am driven by risk, and I do like the idea of spreading an idea that will saturate the world and make it a better place.
Nice. Very cool. Love it. All right. So last but not least, where can my audience find you?
So I can be reached at www.marvelvillage.com. That is our website. We can be reached on Facebook at the Marvel Village. We have a Facebook page.
Very cool.
It's private, but they, people can ask if they want to join.
To be part of it.
To be part of it. And then we have a book an interactive book that we're turning into an app, and we're going to be releasing that at our local Brambleton library.
Nice.
On August 13th on a Tuesday night. So people are welcome to come and join that. The book is very special because the illustrations, it was authored, it's been a family affair. And my oldest son illustrated the book.
Very cool. That's so
Yeah,
awesome.
and the illustrations are now and the characters are now registered at the Library of Congress. So it's really
Nice.
special for him.
That's very
And
cool.
we're going to be releasing, doing a special meetup, kind of meet the young authors,
Mm-hmm.
August 13th over at the Brambleton Library
Nice.
at 7 p.m. And then if people would like to reach out to me personally,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they have a question about, you know, uh, you know, neural inclusion and neurodiversity or their brain and, finding their inner genius,
Mm-hmm.
they can reach out to me directly through email.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at the right? The
Mm-hmm.
Marvel Village
Nice.
at gmail.com. And
Perfect.
please, send me their questions. And, if they're interested in finding my TED Talk is already on YouTube. So they
Oh,
can
cool.
always,
Awesome.
they could search Candice, Candice, Fathi, Fathi, and then
Nice.
the word genius. Or you can actually just search the word Candice and genius, and
Yeah.
that will also reach you there on
Yep.
YouTube.
I'll have all the links to all of the locations you mentioned in the show notes. So if anybody wants to get to it, they can simply go to the show notes, tap on the link, and get
Yeah,
to the TED Talk, get to the website,
yeah.
or be able to.
Our website is under construction, where we do a lot of things for our kids, by our kids,
Mm-hmm.
authored with our kids, and
Yeah.
so it is under construction. So probably the best dynamic live current way to reach me is through email at
Mm-hmm.
the Marvel Village at Gmail or through the Facebook page.
Nice. No, I think we'll have the episode up by then, hopefully.
Okay, yeah, that would
Yeah.
be great. That would be great. Well,
Fantastic.
thank you so much. It's been wonderful. It's been a pleasure being
Yeah,
here
thank you so
today.
much. Thank you for coming on to the podcast. This was really exciting, really powerful stuff, and looking forward to checking out the YouTube TED Talk again because it was a great talk, and I'll be sure to share it with my
Hmm.
friends.
Yeah, and finding our genius, because
Yes.
we all have it. We all have it. We all have it. We all are
Perfect.
uniquely genius. All right. Well, thank you so
Thank you,
much. You
Zane.
guys have a great day.
You have a good day. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the episode. Thanks so much for listening to our guest on this episode. Please send me an email at junaid@hacksandhobbies.com to tell me what you loved about our guest today. You could find links mentioned in this episode on the hacksandhobbies.com website.